So to Val's point, finding the team was critical, and we went through countless interviews. And we could talk a little bit about what we looked for naturally: experience, confidence, charisma, but perhaps more importantly was finding folks that not just knew the Kurasu brand, but appreciated it.
Let's be honest, cheap, watered-down drinks aren't cutting it anymore. Raw Beverage Trading partners with venues that want to win. We develop bold, consistent, damn good products made with real ingredients because your customers can taste the difference. Matcha, we're on it. Cold brew, best in class. We're not here to chase pennies. We're here to build brands, loyalty, and bottom line profits. Stop letting cost controllers call the shots. Raw is where margin meets meaning. If you're looking for a partner, not just a supplier, contact sales@rawcoffee.ae or check the show notes for details. Welcome to the Map of Forward Middle East podcast, friends. I'm your host, Leah Safar, and this is episode 2 of a 5-part series with David and Valeria from Kurasu DXB or Kurasu Dubai. We are talking about how to open a globally recognized specialty coffee brand in the UAE. Kurasu is a brand that was started in Kyoto, and it is going global as in a franchise model. Yozo, the founder of Kurasu, came on the podcast and talked about that process of going global. And we are talking about Kurasu here in Dubai and the process of going through that. Guys, when we left the last episode, we were talking about what it was like to find the place that you want to build your first store. I'm assuming that there's not just going to be one store, right? Like when you, right, so great, excellent. I'm very happy about that. But the idea is that you open a store, your first store needs to tell the story for all the stores that come after it. So the first store has to hit well. First of all, I'd like to ask you, how do you, before we talk about getting to day one, how do you go through figuring out where you want to put it?
Great question. So whether this be a feature or a bug of Dubai retail is to be foreseen. But unless you are the likes of In-N-Out or Chick-fil-A, you, with your first entrance into the market, cannot get into Dubai Mall, cannot get into Mall of the Emirates, cannot get into Dubai Hills Mall. You won't.
Really?
Unless you've built local brand equity and have proven to the powers that be that indeed have a local audience, that captivated local audience, these big developers or malls, they're simply not interested. Dubai is far too competitive for these developers to take a chance on a brand who's yet to prove concept here. And so for us, we had to reckon it's the chicken or the egg for any type of retailer who's looking to come to Dubai for the first time. Sure, you need to be in a place where there's footfall such that you can market the brand and show your concept to the city. But you can't get that footfall because you need to go into an area that lacks it.
Right.
And so we were reconciling, we'd love to be in a Dubai Mall, Mall of the Emirates, Dubai Hills Mall. But unfortunately, Kurasu just doesn't have the same gravitas that an In-N-Out or Chick-fil-A would have to get us there.
Right.
So we scoured the city for areas that had a contingency nearby, that were central enough to attract those as north of, as Al Nada, and then south as Dubai South and everywhere in between, and had parking like you mentioned, and were run by a good developer, and we stumbled across Dar Wasl.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And another important point for us to make a decision was, what is our target audience? Who do we really want to attract? Who do we want to sit down at our shop, have our coffee, enjoy the place, relax? Who has coffee at night? So that's where the coffee strip in Dubai is really. Dar Wasl, all that street is full of coffee shops that have that night audience, but also have schools and people come in the morning and also work from there. So once we found the spot, it was a no-brainer.
And we'll,
Is it? Sorry, go ahead.
just briefly, what we found interesting about Dar Wasl, which again is where Kurasu DXB is, the first of many, which we'll get to later on.
Inshallah.
So what's really unique and curious about Dar Wasl, Wasl has done an incredible job of converting Dar Wasl into let's call a spade, a dead asset for years, into now what's likely the most enviable food mecca of the city, right? You've got
It's beautiful.
beautiful, and you've got a diverse array of options from incredible Iranian food from Baron Jack to cookies from London cookie shop Creme,
Moon slice.
Moon Slice, which is incredible pizza. The folks next door to us, a normal day, which is incredible.
Now I'm hungry.
But so what's so interesting is you get this footfall of sophisticated eaters from all over the UAE, but there was not a specialty coffee shop focused on uber high quality coffee, despite so many wonderful F&B offerings. And we didn't need a kitchen. We didn't need a massive space. And this one unit that was 1,400 square feet, didn't have kitchen provisions, right next to the entrance.
No outdoor seating.
No outdoor seating. So again, I mean, there were inherent risks. So this is the biggest Kurasu in the world at 1,400 square feet.
Is it really?
The next biggest is about 1,000 in Jakarta.
Wow.
There's no kitchen provision. It's not on the front side of the mall, so you don't get that external facade signage that BOs get.
And there was,
which is almost a part of its charm, right? Like I get a feeling from the brand, it's not trying to be obvious. It's not trying, it doesn't need to be obvious, because once you find it, it delivers so well on what its promise is that it's almost like finding a treasure.
It's funny you say that, because we've got this small placard at our entrance on the ground, which is Instagram now ad nauseum, and the sign says, which is the Kurasu's headline, "We serve specialty coffee from Kyoto." That's it. Like, who are we as a business? We serve
Not important.
coffee from Kyoto.
Yeah.
And if you're walking down Dar Wasl, to your point, Lee, and you just see the sign, it says so little but so much at the same time that it almost invites you in to explore what the hell that means. And
well, especially in a city, somebody described Dubai to me the other day in a really fascinating, unusual, but exactly on point way. He said, Dubai is a city that's an exhibition center. And in a city where everything is on exhibition, everything is trying to get noticed, the simplicity and the more subtle approach seems to stand out. And when the product delivers on what you're beyond what you're expecting, that's when people become your evangelists, where they go and tell it, like some crazy lady on a podcast turns around and can't stop talking about Kurasu. And I got to tell you, I did not know about Kurasu at all until I started seeing some people in Dubai posting about the event, that the opening event that you guys had. And I'm like, wow, I got to check this place out. And I had mentioned it to one of my clients, and he went, that will be the best coffee you've had. I went, what do you mean? He's like, I'm telling you, Kurasu will be the best coffee you have in Dubai. And so it was curiosity that led me there. And I was very pleasantly surprised by all the touch points, but that's old news. Everybody knows that. I want to know more about you guys. So when we figure out where it's going to be, you guys not having any experience in coffee, how do you then go from, okay, we've got a location, because you've got experience in business and in law, so which is a huge leg up. Like it's a massive help. So how do you then go about putting together the rest of the business?
Yeah. So I think the next important part was hiring a good team. And we obviously did that with the help of Japan. They guided us into choosing the right people or what we should be looking for. But also, I think one of our key players, which is our general manager, Amin. I believe you've met him as
Shout out to
well.
Amin.
Shout out to Amin, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll let David tell the story on how he became our general manager, but he has been essential piece of the puzzle and helped us find a good team. He's coffee expert, and he was introduced to coffee by Kurasu, which is really special, I think, in 2017.
Wow.
It's a very interesting story, yeah. So I think he was an essential part.
So I don't want to boost Amin's ego when he's listening to this. Not is Amin
boost away. He's your manager.
gosh, manager and partner. So
Correct.
Oh, wow.
absolutely. So again,
Nice.
boosting his ego. Not only is he a essential part or piece of the puzzle, he is the essential piece of the puzzle. We couldn't have done anything
Nice.
we have without Amin. So funny enough, this was probably very soon after we had our initial chat with Yozo, July of last year. So Amin is actually a friend of mine prior to Kurasu DXP. And he and I were catching up. I knew from being his friend that he was far more into coffee than even I was. Aside from having the passion for it, he had also worked in coffee. He worked at a coffee shop in Toronto as a barista. And I had told him, listen, I'm tinkering with Val with the idea of potentially bringing a really well-known Japanese coffee shop to Dubai. And as soon as I finished my sentence, he goes, Kurasu?
That's so great. I love when the universe does this.
So which for me was not only another piece of market validation.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
It was also
it's guided.
It's guided.
Yeah, you came home that day. Val, you're not gonna believe it. I was talking to Amin today, and he told me a story, and I'm like, it's meant to be.
We have this word in Arabic, maktub. Maktub means it's written.
Maktub.
And this is maktub 100%.
Indeed.
Correct.
So
yeah, wow.
to Val's,
what happened next?
So to Val's point, finding the team was critical, and we went through countless interviews. And we could talk a little bit about what we looked for naturally: experience, confidence, charisma, but perhaps more importantly was finding folks that not just knew the Kurasu brand, but appreciated it. And there was a lot of the Kurasu brand it's not quantifiable. It's not even explainable. You need to feel it.
It's like a lifestyle.
It's a vibe.
A lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle.
Which Kurasu to live in Japanese.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well done, Val. Well done.
So finding a team that really appreciated that sentiment. There's, for better or worse, and this is by no means a diagnosis of mine, but there is a sir, ma'am culture in Dubai where you walk into a restaurant, a coffee shop, a retail concept, you'll be addressed as sir or ma'am, which is fine and in some ways wonderful. And
some cultures appreciate
that. And many cultures appreciate that. And who am I to say that isn't a good form of customer service or is indicative of good or bad culture? That's not why I'm mentioning this. It just wasn't the culture we wanted at Kurasu DXP. It's not the Kurasu culture in Japan. For example, if you look at our staff when you do visit Kurasu at Dar Wasl, there's no uniform. I think we're probably the only coffee shop in Dubai where our baristas don't have uniforms. And so finding a team that would embrace, welcome you to the shop, not as sir or ma'am, but as a friend, as a friendly, familiar phrase, as bro, as sister, as whatever affectionate name you'd like to use. And not being afraid to really break that societal norm we've all really adopted in the UAE for so long was really important. Was really, really important.
Yeah, an important part that a lot of people, we talked in the first episode about good coffee shops versus just a coffee shop, right? Culture is such an important part. The internal culture in a business is such an important part of running a coffee shop. particularly because your internal culture is on display. It is a performance, and it is there for everybody to see. A lot of businesses don't spend a lot of time putting those pieces together to figure that out while they're choosing the members of their team. And when you're a franchise, you don't get to determine that culture as much. If I'm understanding it correctly, you have to figure out what the Kurasu culture is. And then do you have room to adapt a little bit of your own flavor of that culture in with Kurasu?
Sure. I'd like to think and say with confidence, we've got quite a lot of autonomy.
Yeah, great.
The brand. I suppose the second part of the response is, but we don't need it.
Yeah.
Kurasu's taught us so much that who are we to deviate from what's worked so well in Kyoto and Jakarta and Bangkok and Singapore and other parts of the world. So, in fact, I'll be the first to admit it. I wanted to have staff uniforms. I wanted the baristas to all
really
same shirt. And in fact, it was then going to Kurasu in Kyoto and talking about it with Yozo and Kai, who's the head of instruction, who we can talk about, who's wonderful. They all said, no, our staff come as they please.
And seeing how they work there without uniform is so special. Everyone has their own identity, their own personality, which really shines through, which I think is something very important in Kurasu Dubai here, because we sell coffee, but we also want to sell an experience. We want to provide a customer experience that makes people want to come back, not only for the coffee, but for a conversation with our baristas, with me and David, with Amin. We want people to feel at home. And I think I can see lots of repeat customers that love coming in, love having a chat with me when I'm working there. And I think that's very special and very Kurasu, and also very Dubai in some ways, because people want that connection. The first comments I've heard from people coming into the shop the first weeks was saying, it's so interesting to see owner operators at the shop so often and so special, because we really feel appreciated. So
it's not done here very
exactly.
often.
So people want that and want to give them coffee, but we also want to give them an experience. And I think Kurasu marries those two things perfectly.
All said.
Yeah.
Really well said. Did you guys get training in coffee before you hired your team? Wait. I'm so fascinated by this. Go ahead. The look on your faces.
Put it this way. You put me behind the bar, Kurasu DXB closes in 2 days.
Not even for a matcha, bro?
I can steep the cold brew in a toddy overnight, no problem.
That's not that hard.
I can heat up our cookies. Probably not our brownies, but definitely our cookies. Well, then
No, we haven't got the yet. Correct.
That's about it. And let's put it this way, that's good for the brand that I'm not behind the bar.
But to be honest,
excellent.
I've learned so much.
Yeah.
I love being there with the team. I love for them to teach me how to make good coffee. The only thing I don't have, it scares me a little bit, is steaming the milk. I feel that's very tricky, so I don't want to burn myself. But I think I've gotten a lesson from everyone on the team, and it's so humbling and so special.
I reckon we could lean on your corporate lawyer skills there a little bit, and I think we could get you past that fear a little bit, maybe. I think we could find that. If you can walk in the world of the corporate lawyers, I reckon we could get you to steam some milk and make a cappuccino.
I'll try. I'll be less scared and try.
I wanted to ask you guys, when you first set out to do something like this, it sounds like you guys are visualizers. It sounds like you guys are very intentional about deciding that this is going to be successful. Did you have fears?
I think I 100% had fears, especially when I came to the point where I had to leave my corporate job to do this full time. It's scary. It's scary not to have a paycheck every month, to not know what's going to happen, because it could very well just not happen in the first month. We could see that all the research we did and all the models we prepared weren't going to turn out that way. But at the same time, I love the brand so much. I've been living here for 7 years, and it was opportunity that I think it was worth, regardless of all my fears. So yeah, we decided to push through, and I'm so happy we did. And not only because of monetary compensation or anything, but because it proved to myself that I can do this. I can do hard things, and I can do it again. Even if it doesn't work, or in the future it's not what we expected. It just gives you that trust in yourself, which I think is essential to have to continue on.
1,000%. I feel so happy for you, Valeria, that your first foray into business is in a franchise model like this, because it doesn't go this way for all franchises.
You're right.
And it's so hard to look at Kurasu like a franchise.
Yeah.
Right, because like you look at most franchises and it's fast food, or it's, you know, a sports kind of brand or something like that, you know, like a Foot Locker or something like that. But this is far too classy to think of it as like this is just another out of the box business. And like I love people doing hard things, but sometimes the friction points of starting your own brand is so tight that it can often discourage people from doing it. I'm really happy for you, Valeria, that this was your first foray into business, because you'll go further. You'll find the excitement of opening more businesses, and you won't get worn down like other people, me being one of them, of like, my first business almost killed me. And it does to most people.
Yeah.
So
to that point, Lee, by the way, when Yozo refers to what our franchisees around the world, he doesn't use that word. He says partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we love.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
But for me, also, when I went to Japan, and even this is a franchise, it doesn't feel like it. So when I went to Japan and Yozo was explaining everything and took us around and explained his why for Kurasu and where he wanted to go, it makes you have a sense of, oh my God, I need to be responsible. I'm taking someone else's child somewhere else, and I need to protect that name, protect the brand, because he's so carefully and beautifully created this whole brand. So it's an honor that he allowed us to do this, and we obviously admire everything he's done. So we want to take care of that as much as possible.
That's awesome. Before we wrap up, David, did you have any fears coming into this?
I know I'll come off like an arrogant schmuck, but frankly...
Oh, but you've done this before. So, like, this wasn't your first business, right?
Important context, right. It's my third. And the first of which was the diamond business I mentioned very briefly in the first episode, which was, for all intents and purposes, a colossal failure the first 3 years.
Yep.
And in fact...
That'll do it.
Yeah. And so COVID was actually a implicit tailwind and lifeline for the business, which changed the diamond industry so much. So that was quite beneficial for our business. And fortunately, it's gone great since then. 5-iron was number 2. 5-iron is a 32,000. So 5-iron golf, again, mentioned it in the first episode. Indoor golf club by day, party by night, American brand. We decided to bring 5-iron golf to Dubai late last year. But when I say bring franchise indeed, to give context as to what we built here, your typical 5-iron golf in the US is 10,000 square feet. The one we built in Dubai is 32,000 square feet.
Oh, shit.
So that was an undertaking. Challenged me in more ways than one.
You're very big on go big or go home, right?
As I mentioned in the first episode, you're either all in or...
oh, get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, right. You said it, not me.
You're in the fucking way, yeah.
Voila. So that gave me the confidence that if I, with the support of my partners and investors and colleagues, can open a 32,000 square foot, 17 simulator, 4-bar, 1 gym, 2 locker room, 2 sauna facility in Dubai Marina, that I'd like to think we can open a 1,400 square foot coffee shop.
Yeah. And the context is important, right? Like when you, and I think what's important is I coach a lot of businesses that are partnerships. It rarely ends well.
No.
And you guys recognizing that you have different experience in this, but you have a shared experience in building this together. That's really lovely. I have high hopes for this partnership, let me tell you. Okay. Next episode, it means I get to drink good coffee all over Dubai. So I'm being very selfish, let's be real. Okay, next episode, folks, we're going to talk about what happens when you are launching it here in Dubai. Let's head into the next episode. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. This episode is part of a 5-part series produced by Mapper Forward. Check the full playlist and guest details in the show notes, as well as how you can support our work in the coffee industry. Become a premium YouTube subscriber, explore our Patreon and any brands we've partnered with to bring you this podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us grow our audience.